They tell you that mercy is its own reward, that the kindness you extend into the darkness will somehow find its way back to you wrapped in gratitude and grace. But here's what they don't tell you. Sometimes mercy doesn't return your calls. Sometimes it takes everything you offer and leaves you with nothing but the hollow echo of your own foolish hope. And sometimes, just sometimes, mercy grows teeth. I learned this truth in the cruelest way possible. Nursing a dying wolf in a cabin that wasn't even mine anymore, waiting for a miracle that would never come. Not for me, anyway. They also tell you that fate has a plan, that suffering has meaning, that every broken thing can be made whole again. But when you're 26 years old, and your body has already betrayed you 3 times, 3 pregnancies that never made it past 12 weeks, 3 tiny heartbeats that simply stopped, you start to understand that some things stay broken, that some kinds of empty never get filled. My name is Patricia Russell, and I was the wolf keeper's daughter who couldn't keep anything, not a child, not a husband, not even my own dignity when the pack elders stood in judgment and declared me genetically unsuitable for mating bonds. Those were their exact words. Not infertile, not unfortunate, unsuitable, as if I were a faulty product being recalled from the shelves. My ex-husband Dane had looked almost relieved when they annulled our marriage. He'd already found his replacement before the ink dried on the dissolution papers. Mira Silverpaw, whose belly swelled with his child within 3 months, whose body did exactly what mine refused to do. The pack celebrated their bonding ceremony like it was a national holiday. I wasn't invited, but I heard the music from my father's cabin at the edge of Packlands. Music and laughter, and the sound of a future I would never have. But this story isn't about Dane, or Mira, or even the 3 tiny souls I carried and lost. This story is about the wolf. The blind wolf I found bleeding in the snow on the winter solstice, the longest night of the year. The wolf whose silver fur was matted with blood and frost, whose breath came in shallow gasps that fogged the air between us. The wolf who should have died, who was meant to die, probably, but who I dragged back to my father's cabin anyway because I couldn't just leave him there. Because mercy, apparently, is a disease I can't cure myself of. I didn't know then that mercy has a price, that kindness is just another word for debt, that sometimes, when you save something from death, you're not rescuing it at all. You're just giving it time to decide what to do with you. Before we dive into Patricia and Tony's journey, if you love stories about second chances and forbidden love that defies all odds, you'll want to check out the Alpha's Second Chance, now available and shown on your screen. Links in the description below. Now, let's begin. Chapter 1. The night I found him, I'd been walking for hours. Not because I had anywhere to go. I'd lost the right to anywhere 6 months ago, when the Council of Elders formally stripped my pack status. I was tolerated now. Permitted to live on the outskirts. Allowed to exist, as long as I didn't remind anyone too loudly that I was still breathing. No, I walked because stillness was worse. Because my father's cabin, the one he'd left me before his heart attack took him last spring, was too quiet, too full of empty rooms and empty cradles I'd built in my mind, too heavy with the weight of all the things that would never be. So I walked. The forest in winter is a different creature than the forest in any other season. Everything soft dies or hides. What remains is bone and bark, truth without ornamentation. Ice crystals clung to bare branches like broken prayers, and my breath formed clouds that dissipated into nothing, over and over. A perfect metaphor for my entire existence, really. I wasn't supposed to be this far north. The boundary markers were clear. Pack territory ended at the river bend. Beyond that lay the disputed lands, the buffer zone between our pack and the northern ridge wolves. No one went there. Not unless they were hunting, or scouting, or stupid. Guess which category I fell into. I'd been following a deer trail, not because I was tracking anything, but because paths are easier than breaking new ground. The snow was deep here, untouched except for the delicate prints of rabbits and the occasional bird. The silence was so complete it felt aggressive, like the forest was holding its breath, waiting for something to happen. That's when I smelled it. Blood, not the clean, quick scent of a fresh kill. This was slower, heavier. The smell of something dying badly, taking its time about it. Every instinct I had left, and after what I'd been through, There weren't many screamed at me to turn around, to go back to my cabin and pretend I'd never caught that scent on the wind. But I've never been good at listening to instincts. I found him in a hollow between two fallen trees, half buried in snow that had turned pink with his blood. At first, I thought he was dead. His silver fur was so still, dusted with ice crystals that sparkled in the moonlight like some kind of grotesque decoration, beautiful and terrible at the same time. Then I saw his ribs move. Just barely. A shallow breath that could have been his last. He was massive, easily twice the size of any wolf I'd ever seen. His fur was pure silver, not the gray-white of typical wolves, but actual silver, like moonlight had been spun into fur. Even dying, even broken, he was magnificent. And his eyes were wrong. Wolves' eyes glow when light hits them yellow, gold, sometimes green. But this wolf's eyes were milky white, clouded over completely. Blind, maybe from birth, maybe from injury. Impossible to tell through all the blood. Speaking of blood, there was so much of it. Claw marks raked across his left side, deep gouges that had torn through fur and muscle down to the bone. His right hind leg was bent at an angle that made my stomach turn, and his face, something had struck him hard across the muzzle, leaving a gash that split his lip and exposed teeth that were too long, too sharp, even for a wolf this size. He'd lost a fight. Badly. The smart thing, the sane thing would have been to keep walking. Let nature take its course. He was going to die anyway. Why prolong the suffering? Why get involved? But I'd already dropped to my knees in the snow beside him. "Hey," I whispered, my voice rough from disuse. I hadn't spoken to anyone in 3 days. "Hey, it's okay. I'm not going to hurt you." The wolf's clouded eyes didn't move, didn't track toward my voice, but his ear twitched, just slightly. Awareness, even at the edge of death. I stripped off my gloves and pressed my bare hands to his side, feeling for the warmth of life beneath all that blood and fur. His heartbeat was there, faint but steady, stubborn, like he was too angry to die, or too stupid, or too something. I knew that feeling intimately. "You're a fighter," I murmured, more to myself than to him. "Good, you're going to need to be." The rational part of my brain, the part that still functioned after everything I'd been through, catalogued the impossibilities. He was too heavy for me to carry. Even if I could drag him, the cabin was over 3 miles away. He'd die of blood loss or shock long before I got him there. And even if, by some miracle, I managed to get him home, what then? I wasn't a healer. I had basic first aid supplies, sure, but nothing for wounds this severe. This wolf needed a miracle. I'd already used up all my miracles, but my hands were already moving, already pulling off my scarf to press against the worst of the bleeding, already making promises I couldn't keep. "Listen to me," I said, leaning close enough that my breath fogged against his muzzle. "I'm going to get you out of here. I'm going to drag your heavy ass all the way back to my cabin, and you're going to live, understand? You don't get to die in this frozen ditch. Not tonight. Not on my watch." The wolf made a sound low, weak, more of a whimper than a growl. "Pain, not aggression." "I know," I whispered. "I know it hurts, but dying hurts worse. Trust me on that." I didn't have rope. I didn't have a sled. What I had was my winter coat, my stubborn refusal to let another thing die on my watch, and approximately 3 hours before hypothermia or exhaustion took me down too. So I did the only thing I could. I took off my coat, spread it on the snow beside him, and used every ounce of strength I possessed to roll his massive body onto it. He whimpered again, a sound that broke something inside my chest. But he didn't snap at me, didn't fight. Maybe he understood I was trying to help. Maybe he was just too far gone to care. I grabbed the coat's arms and started pulling, 3 miles through snow, dragging a wolf that probably weighed as much as I did. My muscles screamed. My lungs burned. Ice formed in my hair and eyebrows. My fingers went numb, then painful, then numb again. Several times I fell. Twice I almost gave up, but I kept thinking about those clouded eyes. About how he'd fought to take one more breath, and then another, even when his body was done. About how neither of us deserved to die alone in the snow. So, I pulled, and pulled, and pulled. By the time I saw the cabin's lights through the trees, I was hallucinating. Seeing my father standing on the porch, pipe smoke curling into the night air. Seeing Dane, reaching for me with the ghost of the love he used to have. Seeing 3 small figures holding hands in the snow, my children who never were, who would never be. I blinked, and they were gone. Just the cabin, just the wolf, just me. I got him inside, somehow, shoved furniture out of the way, dragged him close to the fireplace, built the fire higher than I should have, feeding it log after log until the cabin was almost too hot. Then I pulled out every clean towel, every sheet, every scrap of fabric I owned. The next 4 hours were a blur of blood and water and desperate, fumbling attempts to clean wounds I had no business touching. I packed the deep gashes with honey, an old remedy my father swore by, wrapped his ribs with strips torn from my bedsheets, splinted his leg with kindling and hope. He never woke, never moved except to breathe. By the time I finished, dawn was breaking, and I was covered in his blood. My cabin looked like a slaughterhouse, and the wolf, the blind, silver wolf, who should have died a dozen times over, was still breathing. I collapsed beside him on the floor, too exhausted to make it to my bed, and pressed my hand to his side to feel the proof of his heartbeat. "Don't you dare die now," I whispered. "Not after all that." His ear twitched again. That same tiny movement, awareness. I fell asleep there, on the floor next to a dying wolf, and dreamed of nothing at all. Chapter 2. The first night, I woke to the sound of growling. Not the deep, aggressive rumble of a wolf defending territory. This was softer, threaded with pain. A sound that came from somewhere between consciousness and delirium. My eyes snapped open to find the cabin bathed in afternoon light, golden and warm. I'd slept through most of the day, and the wolf was awake. Sort of. His massive head thrashed weakly against the floor, those clouded white eyes rolling sightlessly. His body remained still, too injured to move, probably, but his jaws snapped at invisible enemies, teeth clacking together with enough force to make me flinch. Hey, it's okay," I said, my voice hoarse. I pushed myself up, every muscle in my body screaming in protest. I felt like I'd been beaten with hammers. "You're safe. His head whipped toward my voice, and a real growl erupted from his chest. Low and dangerous. A warning. I froze. Right. He was blind. He couldn't see me, couldn't know I was the one who'd pulled him from the snow. For all he knew, I was the thing that had torn him apart in the first place. For all he knew, I was his killer, just taking my time about it. "I'm not going to hurt you," I said slowly, keeping my voice level and soft. "I found you last night, brought you here. You were dying." Another growl, but quieter this time, uncertain. "I know you can't see me," I continued, staying very still. "And I know you're in pain. But I need to check your wounds. Make sure they're not infected. I need to give you water. Can you let me do that?" Silence. Just his ragged breathing and the crackle of the fire. Then, slowly, his body relaxed. Not surrender, exactly. More like exhaustion overriding caution. His head lowered back to the floor, though his muscles remained taut, ready to strike if I made the wrong move. I took that as permission. Moving carefully, telegraphing every motion even though he couldn't see it, I approached. "I'm coming closer now, just to check the bandages. I'm going to touch your side." My hand made contact with his ribs, and he flinched but didn't snap. Up close, I could feel the heat radiating from his body, too much heat. Fever, almost certainly. The wounds were fighting infection, and his body was fighting back. The bandages were soaked through with blood and something else. Fluid. Not good. "Okay," I murmured, more to calm myself than him. "This is going to hurt, but I need to clean these again." I spent the next hour working in careful silence, changing bandages, cleaning wounds that looked angrier than they had the night before, red and swollen, hot to the touch. He whimpered occasionally but never tried to bite, never pulled away, just endured. When I finally finished, I sat back on my heels and really looked at him. Even broken, even sick, he was extraordinary. That silver fur caught the light like water, rippling with each breath. His paws were enormous, tipped with black claws that could have gutted me without effort. And his face, despite the wound across his muzzle, had a strange nobility to it, like he'd been something important once, before whatever had reduced him to this. "You need water," I said, "and food, if you can keep it down." I brought a bowl of water first, holding it close to his muzzle. He sniffed, hesitated, then drank. Not much, but enough. Good sign. Food was trickier. I had dried meat venison from last season's hunt, but giving solid food to a wolf this injured seemed like a bad idea. So I made broth instead, boiling the meat until the liquid was rich and dark, then cooling it enough that it wouldn't burn. "Here," I said, cupping my hand and letting the broth pool in my palm. "Try this." I held my hand near his muzzle, and after a moment, his tongue darted out, tasting, testing. Then he lapped at the broth, slow and careful, until my palm was empty. "Good," I whispered. "That's good." We repeated the process until he'd had maybe a cup's worth. Not enough, but better than nothing. When he turned his head away, I knew he was done. The afternoon bled into evening. I fed the fire, checked his wounds again, gave him more water. He slept in fits and starts, never fully relaxing, always half aware, waiting for the next attack that wouldn't come. I understood that feeling too. As darkness fell, I found myself talking to him. Not because I expected him to understand he was a wolf, after all, even if he was an unusual one, but because the silence was crushing. Because I'd been alone in this cabin for months with nothing but my own thoughts, and my thoughts were terrible company. "I used to have a husband," I said, stirring the fire with a poker. "Dane. We were bonded, young 18 for me, 20 for him. Everyone said we were perfect together. Both from good families, both strong shifters, both normal." The wolf's ear twitched toward my voice. "We tried for a baby right away. I got pregnant within 3 months. We were so happy." My throat tightened, but I forced the words out. "I lost it at 10 weeks. They said it was common. Try again," they said. So we did. I poked at the fire harder than necessary, sending sparks spiraling up the chimney. Second pregnancy lasted 12 weeks. Third one made it to 11. After that, I laughed. But it came out broken. After that, the pack healers did tests. Found out my body just can't. Something about my genetics. Incompatible markers. Clinical words for your children will always die inside you. The wolf made a soft sound, not quite a whimper. Not quite a groan. Dane tried to be supportive at first, but I could see it in his eyes every time he looked at me. Disappointment, pity. Eventually, he stopped looking at all. I set the poker down and wrapped my arms around my knees. The elders annulled our marriage. For the good of the pack, they said. Dane needed strong offspring. I couldn't provide that. Simple math. Outside, wind howled against the cabin walls. Inside, the fire crackled. He married Mira 6 months later. She's pregnant now. Due in spring. I rested my chin on my knees. Everyone's thrilled. Finally, Dane gets the family he deserves. The family I couldn't give him. Silence, except for the wolf's breathing. I'm not telling you this for sympathy. I continued. I haven't talked to anyone in months, and you can't exactly judge me, can you? You're too busy trying not to die. The wolf's head shifted slightly, angling toward me more directly. Those clouded eyes seemed to stare right through me, even though I knew he couldn't see anything. I saved you because I couldn't save them, I admitted, the truth spilling out like poison from a wound. My babies, I couldn't save any of them, but maybe I could save you. Maybe that counts for something. The wolf was silent for a long moment. Then, slowly, he did something that stole my breath. He moved. It clearly cost him every muscle in his body, tensed with the effort. But he dragged himself across the floor, inch by painful inch, until his massive head rested against my leg. Not aggressive. Not demanding. Just there. Contact. Connection. The first gentle touch I'd felt in half a year. I stared down at him. This broken wolf who had no reason to trust me. Who should have been afraid of me. who was offering comfort when he had none to spare. "You're not supposed to do that," I whispered, my voice cracking. "You're supposed to be feral, dangerous. You're supposed to bite me for touching you." His eyes remained closed, but his breathing evened out, relaxed. My hand moved of its own accord, fingers sinking into that silver fur, so soft, so warm. I stroked his head gently, carefully avoiding his wounds, and felt some of the tension leave his body. "What happened to you?" I murmured. "Who hurt you like this?" No answer, of course. Just the steady rise and fall of his breathing. I sat there for hours, my hand in his fur, watching the fire burn down to embers and rebuild it again without moving, without disturbing this strange peace we'd found. At some point, I started telling him a story. Not my story. I'd dumped enough of my misery on this poor creature. No. I told him a fairy tale. One my father used to tell me when I was small, when the world still made sense. "Once upon a time," I began, my voice soft, "there was a kingdom where everyone could fly except one girl. She was born without wings, and all the other children mocked her, called her Crawler, made her feel small and broken." The wolf's ear twitched, listening. "One day, she found a dragon at the edge of the kingdom. A huge, terrible dragon with scales like midnight and eyes like stars. Everyone was terrified, but the girl wasn't, because she recognized something in that dragon's eyes." My fingers traced patterns in his fur, mindless and soothing. She saw loneliness, the same loneliness she felt. So instead of running, she sat with the dragon. Day after day, didn't try to fix him, didn't try to change him. Just sat. Outside, an owl hooted. The fire popped. Eventually, the dragon spoke, asked her why she wasn't afraid. And she said, "How can I be afraid of someone who understands what it's like to be different?" I smiled slightly, remembering how safe I'd felt when my father told me this story. How seen. The dragon became her friend, her only real friend. And one night, when the kingdom caught fire, he carried her to safety on his back. She didn't need wings after all. She just needed someone who understood. The wolf's breathing had deepened, sliding into real sleep, peaceful sleep. "I used to love that story," I whispered. "Used to think it meant something, that being different wasn't being broken, that understanding mattered more than fitting in." I looked down at the wolf's scarred face, his blind eyes, his bandaged body. Maybe it still means something. Maybe we're both just waiting for the kingdom to catch fire. I don't know when I fell asleep, but I woke hours later to find myself curled on the floor next to him, my hand still buried in his fur, his warmth seeping into my bones. For the first time in 6 months, I'd slept without nightmares. When I woke the second time, it was to the sound of whimpering. The wolf was dreaming, or having a fever nightmare more likely. His legs twitched, running from invisible enemies. His jaws snapped at phantom threats, and that sound, that desperate whimpering, came from somewhere deep in his chest. "Shh," I soothed, my hand on his side. "You're safe." But he didn't wake. The nightmare had him in its grip. Without thinking, I started humming. An old lullaby my mother used to sing before she died when I was 7. I didn't remember the words anymore, just the melody. Soft and repetitive and safe. The wolf's thrashing slowed, his whimpers quieted. I kept humming, kept stroking his fur, until his breathing evened out again. "There you go," I whispered. "Rest now. I've got you." And for reasons I couldn't explain, I meant it. This wolf, this broken, blind, dying wolf, had become mine to protect, mine to save, mine to sit with in the darkness while the rest of the world moved on without us. We were both abandoned things, both cast aside, both fighting to survive one more day, one more hour, one more breath. Maybe that was enough. Maybe that was everything. I fell asleep again with my hand on his heart, feeling it beat steady and strong beneath his silver fur, and dreamed of dragons and wingless girls and promises that might still be worth keeping. Chapter 3. The wolf didn't die. For 3 days, I waited for it, checked his breathing every hour, expecting to find it stopped, changed his bandages, expecting to find the wounds blackened with rot, fed him broth and water expecting him to reject it, to finally give up, but he didn't. Slowly, impossibly slowly, color returned to his gums. The fever broke on the second night, leaving him weak but lucid. By the third day, he could lift his head without trembling, could eat solid food if I tore it into small pieces, could even stand briefly, though his splinted leg wouldn't bear weight. He should have died. Every law of nature said he should have died. But he was stubborn. Or maybe I was. Maybe we were both too angry at the universe to give it the satisfaction. On the fourth night, everything changed. I'd been reading by the fire one of my father's old books about pack history, boring enough to make my eyes heavy. The wolf was dozing nearby, his breathing deep and even. Peaceful. I'd gotten used to his presence. The cabin felt less empty with him in it. Less like a tomb. Then he spoke. "Why did you save me?" The book slipped from my hands and hit the floor with a loud thud. I stared at the wolf, at the man inside the wolf. Because that's what he had to be. A shifter. Not a true wolf at all. But one of my kind. Trapped in fur. "You can talk," I said stupidly. Those clouded eyes turned toward me, unseeing but somehow still focused. "I asked you a question." His voice was rough, like he hadn't used it in years. Deep and resonant, and edged with something dangerous. Not quite a threat. Not quite a warning. Just power, carefully controlled. My heart hammered against my ribs. "You're a shifter, obviously." He shifted slightly, wincing as the movement pulled at his wounds. "Now answer me. Why did you save me?" I should have been afraid. Should have run. Shifters didn't just end up dying in the snow by accident. Someone had tried to kill him, maybe for good reason. Maybe he was dangerous. Maybe I'd brought a monster into my home. But fear required energy I didn't have anymore. "I don't know," I said honestly. "I couldn't just leave you there." "Why not?" His tone was genuinely curious. Most would have. Some would have put me out of my misery. "You did neither. Would you have preferred I kill you?" "I'm not sure yet." He tilted his head, considering. "Depends on what you want in return." "In return?" I laughed, sharp and bitter. What could I possibly want from a half-dead wolf I found in the snow? Everyone wants something. His lip curled slightly, exposing a canine. Gratitude, debt, leverage, control. Which is it? The accusation stung more than it should have. "I don't want anything from you. I couldn't let you die. That's all." Silence stretched between us, broken only by the crackling fire. "You're lying," he said finally. "Not about saving me, but about wanting nothing. Everyone wants something. Even you. You don't know anything about me. I know you're alone. I know you've been talking to yourself for days. I was conscious for more of it than you realized. I know you've been crying in your sleep." His clouded eyes seemed to bore into me despite their blindness. "I know you're as broken as I am." The words hit like a physical blow. I stood abruptly, my chair scraping against the floor. "You don't get to ask me a riddle," he interrupted. I blinked. "What? A riddle? Ask me one." He settled his head back on his paws, those blind eyes still trained in my direction. "If I answer correctly, you have to tell me the truth. If I can't answer, I'll stop asking questions." "That's ridiculous." "Is it? You clearly like stories. You've been telling them to me for 3 days." Something that might have been amusement flickered across his scarred face. "Humor me. I'm bored and injured. Entertainment is the least you can offer." Despite myself, I felt my lips twitch. "You're insane." "Possibly. The riddle? I shouldn't have played along. Should have told him to shut up and sleep. Should have maintained some kind of boundaries with this stranger who wasn't quite a stranger anymore. But I was so tired of silence. So tired of my own thoughts. And there was something almost playful in his tone. Despite the pain, despite the danger, despite everything. "Fine." I crossed my arms, thinking. My father used to love riddles, had taught me dozens. "I have no voice, but I can tell you stories. I have no hands, but I can hold you tight. I have no heart, but I can break yours. What am I?" The wolf, the shifter, was quiet for a long moment. His ears twitched, processing. "A book," he said finally. "That was too easy. You weren't trying." He shifted, settling more comfortably. Now, your turn. Why did you really save me? The playfulness evaporated. Back to this. I sat down slowly, staring into the fire instead of at him. I told you. I couldn't leave you. Why? Because... The words stuck in my throat. Because I know what it's like to be left behind to die. And I wouldn't wish that on anyone. Not even a stranger. Truth. Raw and ugly and real. The wolf was silent for a long time. Then, who left you? Everyone. I laughed, but it came out hollow. My husband. My pack. My own body. In a way, everyone who mattered decided I wasn't worth keeping. Why? Does it matter? It matters to you. Otherwise you wouldn't have said it. Damn him for being perceptive. I can't have children, I said flatly. In a pack that values strength and lineage above everything else, that makes me worthless. So they excised me. Politely. Legally. But completely. Another long silence. Then, your pack is full of fools. I looked at him sharply. You don't know that. I know that strength takes many forms. I know that value isn't measured in offspring alone. His blind eyes remained steady on me. And I know that anyone who would cast aside someone brave enough to drag a dying wolf through 3 miles of snow is an idiot. Something cracked in my chest, not breaking, more like thawing. Ice that had been frozen for so long I'd forgotten it could melt. You don't owe me compliments, I said quietly. I don't need pity. Good, I'm not offering any. He yawned, showing all those sharp teeth. I'm stating facts. There's a difference. Is there? Ask me another riddle, and I'll explain it. Despite everything, I smiled. Actually smiled. You just want to show off. I'm blind, half dead, and stuck on your floor. Let me have something. Fair point. I thought for a moment, reaching for something harder. I can be cracked. I can be made. I can be told. I can be played. What am I? A joke, he said immediately. Damn it. I'd thought that would take longer. You're good at this. I had a good teacher. Something shifted in his expression, pain, but not physical. Memory. A long time ago. Who? He didn't answer. Instead, the difference between pity and fact is this: pity assumes you're lesser. Fact simply acknowledges what is. I don't think you're lesser for being barren. I think your pack is lesser for treating you as if you are. The word barren should have stung. Coming from him, somehow, it didn't, because he said it like a fact, not a judgment, like saying I had brown eyes or pale skin, just a characteristic, not a condemnation. You're strange, I said. I'm told that frequently. Who are you? The question slipped out before I could stop it. I mean, really. You're not just some random wolf. Shifters don't end up that badly injured without a story. His expression shuddered. That's not part of the riddle game. Then give me another question to answer. Fair trade. He considered this. Then, why do you tell stories? To me, I mean, you've been doing it every night. Because I'm lonely. Because you listen without judging. Because it's easier to talk to you than to face my own thoughts. Because everyone deserves stories, I said instead. Even dying wolves who won't tell me their names. I never said I was dying. You're certainly not thriving. That startled a sound from him, almost a laugh, cut short by pain. He winced, his body tensing. Don't, I said quickly, moving toward him. Don't laugh. You'll tear something. Then stop being amusing. I'm not trying to be amusing. I'm just... I knelt beside him, checking the bandages on his ribs. Still secure, thank the gods. I'm just talking, like a normal person. There's nothing normal about you. I paused, my hand on his side. Is that an insult or a compliment? Haven't decided yet. His clouded eyes tracked toward my hand, or tried to. He couldn't see it, but he could feel it. You have gentle hands. The observation was so quiet, so unexpected, that I almost missed it. They're just hands, I said. No, they're kind hands, careful hands, hands that could have let me die but chose not to. He was quiet for a moment. Hands that have held loss and still reached out anyway. My throat tightened. You really need to stop doing that. Doing what? saying things that make me feel like I'm not completely broken. Maybe you're not. You don't know me well enough to make that assessment. Then let me know you better. He shifted, settling under my touch. Tell me another story. Not a fairy tale this time. A real one. About what? About why you're here, in this cabin, alone. It wasn't a question. Not really. But it felt like an invitation. To be seen. To be heard. To matter. Even just for a moment. So I told him. About my father, who'd been the pack's wolf keeper until his heart gave out. About inheriting this cabin and the responsibility that came with it, except I'd lost the right to keep the pack's wolves when my status was revoked. About Dane. And the 3 pregnancies that never made it. About the annulment and Mira's perfect, swelling belly. About the council meeting, where they'd stripped everything from me except my life. And even that felt like a technicality. He listened without interrupting. Without offering empty comfort or hollow reassurances. When I finished, the fire had burned low, and my voice was hoarse. Your turn, I said. Tell me who you are. No. That's not fair. I'll give you something else. He was quiet for a moment, choosing his words carefully. I'll give you a riddle of my own. If you can answer it, I'll tell you everything. If you can't. He paused. Then you have to let me stay here until I'm healed. Without asking questions, without demanding answers. That's not how riddles work. It is now. I should have said no, should have kicked him out injured or not, should have maintained some boundary, some distance, but I was curious, and lonely, and tired of being the only one telling truths. Fine, I said. What's your riddle? Those blind eyes fixed on me, and for a moment, I could have sworn they saw straight through to my soul. I am given freely, but rarely kept, he said softly. I cost nothing but mean everything. I can be spoken or shown, but I'm most powerful in silence. Break me, and I'm worthless. Keep me, and I'm priceless. What am I? I turned the riddle over in my mind, examining it from every angle. Not love, that's too obvious, and he wouldn't have chosen something so simple. Not trust, close, but not quite right. Not hope. I don't know, I admitted finally. What is it? Then I get to stay. And you don't get to ask. There was something almost like satisfaction in his voice. Deal? I should have felt manipulated, cheated, even. Instead, I felt something else. Something lighter. Deal, I said. But you're still going to tell me your name eventually. We'll see. I settled back against the wall, pulling a blanket around my shoulders. The wolf, the nameless, mysterious, infuriating wolf, closed his eyes and let out a long, contented breath. Thank you, he said quietly, just as I was drifting off. For what? For pulling. For the 3 miles. For choosing mercy when you had every reason to choose differently. My hand found his fur again, that unconscious comfort I'd grown used to. You're welcome. And Patricia? His voice was barely a whisper now, sliding toward sleep. For what it's worth, you're not broken. You're just bent. There's a difference. I wanted to argue, wanted to tell him he was wrong, that bent was just another word for ruined, but sleep pulled me under before I could form the words. And for the second time since finding him, I dreamed of nothing but warmth, and silver fur, and promises I couldn't quite hear. Like and subscribe if you've ever felt cast aside like Patricia, because stories like hers deserve to be heard by people who understand what it means to be called unsuitable. Drop a comment if you know what it's cost us. Like to save someone who sees your worth when the world refuses to. Chapter 4. The thawing. The wolf became part of my routine. It happened so gradually, I didn't notice at first. The way I started making extra broth without thinking. The way I caught myself listening for his breathing in the night, checking to make sure he was still alive. The way the cabin stopped feeling like a mausoleum and started feeling like something else. Not quite a home, but not a prison either. By the end of the first week, he could stand without trembling. By the second, he could walk a limping, awkward gait that clearly frustrated him, but movement nonetheless. His wounds scabbed over, then began to scar. Pink flesh showing through silver fur where the worst gashes had been. He was healing. Against all odds, he was actually healing. And I was. I didn't know what I was doing. Learning him, maybe. The way you learn a language or a landscape. All the small details that made him him. Like how he always positioned himself between me and the door. Not obviously, not aggressively, but always there. A wall of fur and muscle between me and anything that might come through. Or how he tilted his head when he was thinking, ears swiveling to catch sounds I couldn't hear. Or how he refused to eat until I'd eaten first. Some strange code of honor I didn't understand but couldn't help finding. Touching, we developed patterns, rhythms. I'd wake at dawn and rebuild the fire. He'd wake shortly after. He always knew when I was up, even before I made noise. I'd make breakfast. We'd eat together in comfortable silence. Then I'd check his wounds, change bandages if needed, and he'd tolerate my fussing with surprising patience for someone who radiated danger like heat. Afternoons, I'd read or mend clothes, or do the 1,000 small tasks that came with living alone in winter. He'd doze by the fire, but never deeply. Always aware, always listening, and at night, I told him stories. I couldn't seem to stop. It became my favorite part of the day, that hour or two before sleep, when the fire burned low and shadows danced on the walls and I could spin tales into the darkness while he listened. I told him every fairy tale I remembered, every legend my father had taught me, every bit of pack history I'd absorbed before they decided I didn't belong to that history anymore. He never interrupted, never asked questions during the stories themselves, just listened with that absolute focus that made me feel like my words actually mattered. It was the closest thing to magic I'd felt in years. On the 10th night, I was halfway through a story about a queen who could speak to ghosts when he interrupted. "That's wrong," he said. I stopped mid-sentence. "Excuse me? The queen, in the version I know, she doesn't speak to ghosts. She is a ghost. That's the whole point." I blinked at him. "There are multiple versions?" "Of course there are. Stories change depending on who tells them." He shifted, getting comfortable. "Tell it the other way." "It's better. I don't know the other way." "Then I'll tell you." And he did. His voice was different when he told stories, richer, more textured. Like he'd spent years learning exactly how to shape words into meaning. He told me about the ghost queen who couldn't remember how she'd died, who haunted her own castle searching for the truth of her murder. About the young king who fell in love with her despite, or maybe because of, her transparent, flickering form. It was beautiful and tragic, and completely different from the version I knew. "Where did you learn that?" I asked when he finished. "Does it matter?" "It might. That's an old story. Northern Ridge territory, if I'm remembering right. My father said they tell it differently up there." Silence. The kind that felt heavy with things unsaid. "You're from Northern Ridge," I said slowly, pieces clicking together. "That's why you were in the disputed lands. You weren't lost. You were..." "Careful, Patricia." His voice dropped to something dangerous. "Remember our deal. No questions about who I am. That's not fair. You're the one who brought it up. I told you a story. That's all." I wanted to push, wanted to demand answers. But something in his posture, the way his muscles had gone tense, ready to bolt despite his injuries, made me stop. "Fine," I said. "No questions. But I get to tell the next story my way." "Fair enough." The tension eased. He relaxed back into his spot by the fire. "Though for what it's worth," he added quietly, "your version wasn't wrong. Just softer. You tell stories like someone who still believes in happy endings. And you tell them like someone who doesn't. Maybe we're both right." I considered that. "Maybe we're both wrong." That almost laugh again, the one he kept catching before it could fully form. "Maybe." We fell into silence, but it felt different now, charged with something I couldn't quite name. Awareness, maybe, of how easy this had become, how comfortable, how dangerous that comfort might be. The next morning, I woke to find him standing at the window, not just standing. Fully upright, weight distributed evenly despite the splint still on his hind leg. He stood perfectly still, his blind eyes fixed on something I couldn't see, his ears pricked forward. "What is it?" I asked, pushing myself up from my makeshift bed on the floor. I'd given up sleeping in the actual bedroom a week ago. Too far from the fire, Too far from him, if I was being honest. Someone's coming. My heart stuttered. What? Who? Can't tell. They're still half a mile out, but they're heading this direction. I scrambled to my feet, suddenly very aware of how this looked. A barren, cast-off female living alone with a massive male wolf. Never mind that he was injured. Never mind that nothing had happened between us. Never mind that he was practically a stranger. The pack wouldn't see it that way. You need to hide, I said quickly. I don't hide. You're from Northern Ridge, that makes you enemy territory. If someone from my pack finds you here, they'll what? He turned those clouded eyes toward me, and there was steel in his voice. Kill me? They can try. I'll just add their corpses to the collection. That's not funny. I'm not joking. I grabbed his shoulder, solid muscle under all that fur, and tried to turn him toward me. Please. If they find you here, they won't just hurt you, they'll hurt me too. Harboring an enemy shifter is treason, he finished, his voice going soft. I know. Then why? Because I'm tired of hiding. But even as he said it, I felt him start to move, limping toward the back room, the one I used for storage. But I won't let them punish you for my presence. I'll hide. Thank you. He paused at the doorway, his head turning back toward me. Patricia? Yes? If things go wrong, if they try to hurt you, you run. Understand? Don't try to protect me. Just run. I'm not going to. Promise me. The intensity in his voice made my breath catch. This wasn't a request. It was something deeper. Something that felt like it mattered in ways I didn't understand yet. I promise, I lied. He knew I was lying. I could see it in the way his jaw tightened, but he nodded and disappeared into the back room. I had just enough time to splash water on my face and smooth my hair before the knock came. 3 sharp raps. Authoritative. Official. My stomach dropped. I opened the door to find Elder Torvin standing on my porch, his gray beard dusted with snow, his eyes sharp and assessing. Behind him stood 2 younger males, pack guards. Their expressions were carefully neutral, but their hands rested on the hilts of silver knives. They weren't here for a friendly visit. Elder Torvin, I said, keeping my voice steady. What brings you all the way out here? May we come in? It wasn't really a question. I stepped aside, gesturing them in. My heart hammered against my ribs as they entered, their eyes sweeping the cabin with practiced efficiency, taking in the extra blankets by the fire, the 2 bowls I'd forgotten to put away, the bandages I'd left on the table. Torvin's eyes lingered on the bandages. You've been hurt? Just a cut. Chopping wood. Nothing serious. He didn't sound convinced. We've had reports of Northern Ridge scouts in the area. Have you seen or heard anything unusual? My mouth went dry. No. Nothing. No strange wolves? No unfamiliar scents? I'm out here alone, Elder. I don't exactly get many visitors to compare scents with. One of the guards moved toward the back room. My pulse spiked. Just checking the perimeter, he said, but his hand was on his knife. There's nothing back there but old furniture and supplies, I said quickly. I haven't been in there in weeks. The guard glanced at Torvin, who nodded. He opened the door. I stopped breathing, but the back room was empty. No wolf, no shifter, no sign anyone had been there at all. The guard checked the corners, even looked under the old table, then shook his head at Torvin. Clear. How? Where had he? We're concerned about your safety, Torvin said, drawing my attention back. A female alone, this far from pack lands, with tensions rising between territories. Perhaps you should consider moving closer to the main compound. I'm fine here, I said, fighting to keep my voice level. This is my father's cabin. My home. Your father is dead, Patricia, and you have no standing in the pack to claim territorial rights. His voice wasn't cruel, just matter of fact, stating the truth as he saw it. If something happened to you out here, no one would know. No one would come looking. The words landed like blows, each one precisely aimed. I appreciate your concern, I said through clenched teeth. But I'm not leaving. Torvin studied me for a long moment, then sighed. Very well, but be vigilant. If you see anything unusual, you report it immediately. Understood? Understood. He turned to leave, the guards following. At the door, he paused. Oh, and Patricia? We've arranged a marriage for you. The world tilted. What? Beta Garrett has agreed to take you as a second wife. Purely political, of course. He needs someone to manage his household, and you need pack protection. The ceremony will be in 3 weeks. I can't. It's already decided. His tone brooked no argument. The council approved it this morning. Garrett will send for you when the arrangements are finalized. He left before I could form a coherent protest, the guards pulling the door shut behind them. I stood frozen in the center of my cabin, the walls suddenly closing in. A second wife. To Beta Garrett, who was 43 and already had a wife and 3 children, who needed a household manager, not a partner, who would use me for labor and nothing else, because what else could I offer? I was being traded. Again. Passed from hand to hand like property. They're gone. I spun around to find the wolf. No, the man, because he'd shifted standing in the doorway of the back room. He was. God's. He was beautiful, tall, easily over 6 feet, with silver white hair that fell to his shoulders in waves that matched his fur. His body was carved from muscle and scars, his skin pale except for the healing wounds that stood out in angry red lines across his ribs and thigh. And his eyes were still clouded white, still blind, but somehow even more intense in this form. He was also completely naked. How did you? I started. Crawled out the window, circled around the cabin, came back in through the storm cellar. He leaned against the doorframe, clearly exhausted from the effort. Told you I don't hide. I just strategically relocate. You're insane. You could have torn your wounds open. You could have. I heard what he said, his jaw tightened. About the marriage. It's not your concern, isn't it? He pushed off the doorframe, moving toward me with surprising grace for someone half dead a week ago. You saved my life. Now your pack is selling you off to someone who doesn't deserve you. That makes it my concern. You don't owe me anything. Maybe I want to. He stopped a foot away, close enough that I could feel the heat radiating from his skin, see the way his chest rose and fell with each breath. Tell me the truth, he said softly. Do you want to marry this Garrett? What I want doesn't matter. It matters to me. Answer the question. I looked up at him, this strange, dangerous man who I'd pulled from death, who'd somehow become the only real thing in my hollow life, and felt something crack wide open inside my chest. No, I whispered. I don't want to marry him. I don't want to be anyone's second choice ever again. I don't want to be used and discarded and… His hand cupped my face, cutting off my words. The touch was so gentle, it made my eyes burn. Then don't, he said simply. Stay here, let me heal, and when I'm strong enough, I'll make sure no one ever treats you as less than you are again. You can't promise that. Watch me. I don't even know your name. Something flickered across his face. Pain, regret, resignation. Not yet. But soon. I promise. Another promise you might not keep. No. His thumb brushed across my cheekbone, and I realized I was crying. When had I started crying? This one I'll keep. This one matters. I should have pulled away. Should have put distance between us. Should have remembered that he was still a stranger, still dangerous, still hiding things from me. Instead, I leaned into his touch and let myself believe, just for a moment, that someone actually thought I was worth protecting. The riddle, I said suddenly. From before. I've been thinking about it. And? Is it a promise? The answer? His smile was sad and beautiful and devastating. Yes. Tell me yours then. The promise you're making. When I'm healed, he said. When I can stand without falling. When I'm strong enough to defend it properly. Then I'll tell you everything. My name, my story, my promise. And until then, we have this. He gestured to the cabin, to the space we'd carved out together. Stories and riddles and borrowed time. That's not enough. Maybe not, but it's what we have. He was right. It was all we had. And somehow, impossibly, it felt like more than I'd had in years. You should shift back, I said quietly. Rest. You pushed yourself too hard. In a moment. He didn't move, his hand still cradling my face. Patricia? Yes? Thank you. For not running when Torvin offered you a way out. For choosing this cabin, choosing me over safety. I didn't choose you. I chose myself. Same thing, he said softly. You just don't see it yet. Then he stepped back, his hand falling away, leaving cold in its wake. A shimmer ran through him, and he was Wolf again. Silver fur and blind eyes and that steady, unshakable presence. He limped back to his spot by the fire and collapsed with a heavy sigh. I stood there for a long time, my hand pressed to my cheek where his touch had been, trying to understand what had just happened. What was still happening? When I finally moved, it was to sit beside him, my hand finding his fur like a compass finding north. Tell me a story, he said quietly. A happy one this time. So I did. I told him about a girl who found a dragon, about understanding and friendship, and how sometimes being different is the same as being free. And for the first time, I almost believed it. Chapter 5. The Gift. 3 weeks passed like a dream I was afraid to wake from. The wolf, because he was still the wolf in my mind, nameless and mysterious, grew stronger each day. His limp faded to barely a hitch. The wounds across his ribs closed completely, leaving raised scars beneath that silver fur. Even his blind eyes seemed clearer somehow, though they never regained their sight. We fell into a rhythm that felt dangerously close to domesticity. He started helping with chores or trying to, carrying firewood in his jaws, using his body weight to help me move furniture. Once, I found him attempting to hang laundry, gripping the clothesline carefully between his teeth while I fought not to laugh at the absurdity of it. I can do things, he'd growled when he caught my amusement. I'm not completely useless. I never said you were. You were thinking it loudly. Maybe I was. But watching a massive silver wolf try to be domestic was like watching a sword try to be a butter knife. Technically possible, but missing the point entirely. Still, I appreciated the effort. We talked more too. Not about his past that remained locked behind his riddle and his stubbornness, but about everything else. Philosophy and pack politics. The nature of strength and the weight of expectations. How stories changed, depending on who told them, and why that mattered. He was brilliant. Sharp in ways that cut through my assumptions and made me reconsider things I'd taken for granted my entire life. Your pack is wrong about you, he said one afternoon while I was mending a shirt. Not just morally wrong. Strategically wrong. How do you figure? They've equated value with reproduction. But reproduction without wisdom just creates more fools. You have something far more valuable than a working womb. I set down my needle. And what's that? Vision. The ability to see people as they are, not as they're supposed to be. That's rare. That's worth protecting. He tilted his head toward me. They threw away their best asset because it didn't fit their narrow definition of useful. You're biased. I'm honest. There's a difference. You barely know me. I know you dragged a dying wolf 3 miles through snow. I know you chose possible treason, over turning me in. I know you tell stories like they matter, because to you, they do. His blind eyes fixed on me with that unsettling accuracy. I know enough. Heat crept up my neck. You're just grateful I saved your life. Gratitude and recognition aren't the same thing, Patricia. Stop diminishing yourself. I'm not. You are. You've been doing it since I met you. Explaining away every kindness, every strength, every moment of courage, as if they're accidents instead of choices. He stood, moving closer. Stop it. Or what? Or I'll keep calling you on it until you believe me. That could take years. Good thing I'm patient. The casual assumption that he'd be here for years made my chest tight, because we both knew that wasn't true. Eventually, he'd heal completely. Eventually, he'd leave. Go back to Northern Ridge, or wherever he came from. Resume whatever life he'd been living before someone tried to kill him. And I'd be here, alone again. Possibly married to Beta Garrett if I couldn't find a way out of that nightmare. What are you thinking? He asked, reading my silence correctly. Nothing. Liar. I'm thinking about Beta Garrett, I admitted. About how I have 2 weeks left before he sends for me. The temperature in the room seemed to drop 10 degrees. You're not going. I don't have a choice. There's always a choice. Not for me. Not anymore. I picked up my mending again, needing something to do with my hands. If I refuse, the council will declare me rogue. I'll lose even the scraps of protection I have now. I'll be hunted. Then we leave. I looked up sharply. What? We leave. Together. Before Garrett comes for you. He said it like it was simple, like uprooting my entire existence was no more complicated than deciding what to make for dinner. You don't belong to them anymore, Patricia. They made that clear when they cast you out. So stop acting like you owe them obedience. And go where? Do what? I can't just. Why not? Because it was insane. Because running away solved nothing. Because even if I wanted to, and God's help me, part of me did want to, I couldn't drag him into my mess any deeper than I already had. You're not healed enough to travel, I said instead. I will be. In 2 weeks, I'll be strong enough. You're still blind. You can't. I've been blind for 3 years. His voice was flat, matter of fact. I've learned to compensate. Don't use my disability as an excuse. 3 years. He'd been blind for 3 years, and I'd never thought to ask why. Never questioned it beyond the obvious fact of his clouded eyes. What happened? I asked softly. That's not part of our deal. Forget the deal. I want to know. He was quiet for a long moment, his head turned toward the fire. Then, a punishment. For choosing wrong. Choosing what? Love over duty. His lip curled, exposing a canine. Turns out those two things don't always align. And when they don't, there are consequences. My heart clenched. Who did this to you? Someone who thought they were being merciful, taking my sight instead of my life. He laughed, but it sounded like breaking glass. They were right, in a way. This is worse. I set down my mending and moved to sit beside him, my hand finding his fur automatically now. A gesture as natural as breathing. I'm sorry. I said. Don't be. It taught me something valuable. What? That vision and sight aren't the same thing. I can't see faces anymore. Can't watch sunrises or read expressions. But I can see what matters. Intentions. Character. Truth. His head turned toward me. I see you, Patricia. Clearer than most people with working eyes ever will. That's just pretty words. Test me then. Ask me to describe you. That's not. You have brown hair, darker than honey but lighter than earth. You braid it when you're anxious and leave it loose when you're tired. Your hands are small but strong, marked with scars from work. You move quietly, economically, like someone who learned early not to take up space. His voice softened. And when you smile, which is rare, it's like watching the sun break through storm clouds. Tentative, surprised at its own existence. Beautiful. I couldn't breathe, couldn't think. Couldn't do anything but sit there while his words rearranged something fundamental inside me. How? I finally managed. I listen. I pay attention. I remember every detail because details are all I have. He shifted closer, his shoulder pressing against my leg. You think I can't see you? I see you better than anyone ever has. Better than Dane did, certainly. Better than your pack does. Stop. Why? Because it makes you uncomfortable? Because you've convinced yourself you're not worth seeing? Because it's not real. The words burst out of me, sharp and desperate. Whatever you think you see, it's gratitude, proximity, trauma bonding. It's not real, isn't it? It can't be. We've known each other for 3 weeks. You don't even trust me enough to tell me your name. That landed. I saw it in the way his body tensed, the way his ears flattened slightly. You're right, he said quietly. I don't, but not because you're not trustworthy. Because my name comes with complications you don't need, dangers I won't bring to your door. I'm already in danger. Beta Garrett, remember? That's different. That's your pack being cruel. This would be war. War. The word hung between us like a blade. Who are you? I asked again, though I already knew he wouldn't answer. What did you do that someone would start a war over you? Nothing. Everything. Does it matter? He sighed, the sound heavy with exhaustion. All that matters is that I won't let them take you. Not Garrett, not the council, not anyone. You can't promise that. I already did. The night Torvin came. I promised you'd never have to be anyone's second choice again. That was a promise I intend to keep. I wanted to argue, wanted to tell him he was being ridiculous, that he couldn't protect me from my own pack, that promises made by nameless strangers meant nothing, but I couldn't, because some traitorous part of me believed him. 2 days later, I woke to find something impossible waiting for me. The back room, the one I'd converted to storage after my father died, had been transformed. Where old furniture and dust had lived, there were now shelves, dozens of them, built from the scattered lumber and scrap wood I'd had piled in the corner. They lined every wall, floor to ceiling, precisely measured and carefully crafted. And on those shelves, books. Not my books, I only had a handful, and those were still by my bedside. These were new. Or old, rather. Beautiful leather-bound volumes with gold-embossed spines, hundreds of them, maybe thousands. A library. Someone had built me a library. I turned to find the wolf standing in the doorway, looking remarkably pleased with himself for someone who couldn't actually see the work he'd done. How? I breathed. I'm good with my teeth. And I may have borrowed from your pack's storage facilities last night. You stole from the pack? Borrowed. Aggressively. Without permission. He tilted his head. They have 3 libraries, and weren't using most of these books anyway. Seemed wasteful. You could have been caught. You could have been killed. But I wasn't. And now you have what you need. He moved closer, his blind eyes sweeping the room like he could somehow see it through my reaction. I remembered what you said that first night, about stories mattering, about everyone deserving them. My throat closed up completely. You can't just... I tried. I can. I did. He bumped his head against my hand, that familiar gesture of comfort. You've given me so much, Patricia. Your home, your care, your stories. Let me give you something back. This is too much. It's not enough. It'll never be enough. But it's a start. I walked into the room slowly, running my fingers over the spines. History and philosophy, poetry and folklore, technical manuals on healing and herb lore, even a few children's books, their covers worn from loving hands. He'd chosen carefully, thoughtfully. Every book selected with intention. How did you know which ones to take? I asked. I didn't. I took ones that felt important, heavy with use, books people had loved enough to wear down. He paused. Was I wrong? No. I pulled one down, a collection of Northern Ridge legends, beautifully illustrated. You were perfect. Read to me, he said suddenly. Pick your favorite, and read it. I want to hear how you sound when you're happy. So I did. I chose a book of poetry, old verses about winter and longing and the spaces between words. And I read to him while afternoon light filtered through the window, turning his silver fur to mercury and gold. His eyes closed, his breathing evened out. Content. Peaceful. And I realized, with sudden, terrifying clarity, that I was falling, not the gentle slope of affection or gratitude, the free-fall kind, the dangerous kind, the kind that ended in broken bones and shattered hearts. I was falling for a nameless wolf who would leave me eventually, who had to leave me because staying meant war. But in that moment, reading poetry in a library built from stolen books and impossible care, I couldn't bring myself to stop. Maybe I was always meant to fall. Maybe the only choice was how gracefully I could do it. That night, after I'd read until my voice gave out, after we'd shared dinner and settled by the fire, he asked me something unexpected. Do you regret it? Saving me? I looked at him, surprised. Why would I regret it? Because I've complicated your life, made everything harder. If I'd died in the snow, you could have married Garrett quietly, kept what little peace you had. That's not peace. That's just slow suffocation. Maybe, but it's safe. I don't want safe, I said, surprising myself with the vehemence. I want. What? His blind eyes fixed on me. What do you want, Patricia? To matter, to be chosen, to wake up every morning and know that someone sees me as more than a broken vessel or a political convenience, to be loved. But I couldn't say that. Couldn't admit how desperately I wanted the impossible. I want to not regret the life I have left, I said instead. However long that is. Whatever it looks like. That's not an answer. It's the only one I have. He studied me for a long moment, then stood, shifted. The transformation was fluid now. Easy, like his body was remembering how to move between forms without agony. He stood before me in human skin, naked and scarred and heartbreakingly beautiful, those clouded eyes seeing straight through every defense I'd built. "Ask me," he said softly. "Ask me again what my riddle meant." The answer. "A promise," I whispered. "You already told me." "Ask me which promise." My heart hammered against my ribs. "Which promise?" He stepped closer, close enough that I had to tilt my head back to hold his gaze, close enough that I could feel the heat of his skin, smell the wild scent of him, pine and frost, and something uniquely his. "The promise I made the moment you pulled me from the snow," he said. "When you chose mercy over sense. When you dragged me home and refused to let me die." "What promise?" His hand cupped my face, thumb brushing my cheekbone with devastating gentleness. "That you would be mine," he said simply, "and I would be yours, for however long we have, in whatever way you'll let me." The world stopped spinning. "That's not, you can't." "Why not?" "Because you're leaving. Because you have to. Because you said yourself that staying means war. Then there'll be war." His voice was steel wrapped in silk. "I don't care anymore. I'm tired of choosing duty over what matters. I did that once, and it cost me my sight. I won't make the same mistake twice. You don't even know me. Not really. I know you better than anyone alive. I know your kindness and your stubbornness, your fear and your courage, the way you tell stories like prayers, and touch me like I'm worth saving." His other hand found my face, cradling it between his palms. "I know that in 3 weeks, you've become more essential than air. And I know that if I let you go, if I let them take you, I'll regret it for the rest of my existence." Tears spilled over, hot against his cool fingers. "This is insane," I whispered. "Probably. We'll destroy each other. Maybe. Or maybe we'll build something new from the ruins." "I can't." "Yes, you can." He leaned down, his forehead resting against mine. "Ask me, Patricia. Ask me the question you've been avoiding since the night we met." I knew what he meant. The question that had been building between us like pressure, like inevitability. "Will you stay?" I breathed. "Yes, even if it means war, especially if it means war." "Why?" "Because you're worth fighting for. Because I'm tired of running from what I want. Because," he hesitated, and for the first time since I'd met him, he looked uncertain, vulnerable. "Because I think I'm falling in love with you." The words hit me like lightning, bright and burning and impossible to ignore. "You can't," I said weakly. "You don't even know my middle name. Rose. It's Rose. You told me while I was half conscious that first night." He smiled, small and sad and real. "See? I was listening. I'm always listening. This is a mistake. Then let's make it together." And before I could think, before I could talk myself out of it, before fear could steal this moment, I kissed him. It was desperate and clumsy and perfect. His hands tightened on my face, pulling me closer. My fingers found his shoulders, his hair. Anything to ground myself in the reality of him. He tasted like winter and wild things, like promises I'd stopped believing in. When we finally broke apart, both breathing hard, he pressed his forehead to mine again. "I need to tell you something," he said. "Before this goes any further, before you choose this for real." "Your name?" "More than that. Everything." He pulled back slightly, his blind eyes searching for mine. "But if I tell you, if you know who I really am, you can't unknow it. You'll be implicated, complicit. There's no going back." "I don't want to go back." "You say that now, but I pulled you from death," I interrupted. "I chose treason the moment I let you stay. I'm already complicit. So tell me. Tell me everything." He was quiet for a long moment, warring with himself. Then he sighed and stepped back, running a hand through his silver hair. "My name," he said slowly, each word weighted with consequences, "is Tony Silverthorne, and I'm not just from Northern Ridge territory." He paused, and I felt the air change, felt the importance of what he was about to say. "I'm their king." Chapter 6. The truth. The world tilted sideways. King. He was a king. I stumbled backward, my legs hitting the chair behind me. I sat down hard, staring at Tony like he'd just sprouted a second head. "You're lying," I said. "I'm not. You can't be kings, don't just end up dying in the snow. Kings have guards, armies, protection, not when their own people try to assassinate them." His voice was flat, emotionless, like he was reciting facts about someone else's life. "Not when the thing they're trying to protect becomes the thing they have to die for." My mind raced, trying to piece together fragments into something that made sense. The wounds. Someone from your own pack. My own council. 3 of them. They ambushed me during a territorial survey. He moved to the window, his back to me. Even blind, he seemed to know exactly where everything was. They thought I was getting too lenient, too willing to negotiate with southern packs, too soft, so they tried to kill you. They succeeded, almost. Would have, if you hadn't found me. He turned back toward me, and even without seeing his expression clearly, I could feel the weight of what he was saying. "I'm not supposed to be alive, Patricia. The fact that I am is a problem for a lot of people. Your pack thinks you're dead. They hope I'm dead. There's a difference." He moved closer, slowly, like approaching a spooked animal. "My brother Larry, he's ruling as regent now. Acting king until they can confirm my death and make it official. Does he know you're alive?" "I don't know. Maybe. Probably." Tony's jaw tightened. "Larry and we disagreed about how to lead. About what strength means. About whether peace is possible or just a fantasy weak kings tell themselves. He was part of the ambush. I don't know that for certain, but he didn't stop it." The pain in his voice was palpable. He could have warned me, could have stood with me. He chose not to. I tried to absorb this, process it. A king. I'd been living with a king. Healing him. Feeding him. Touching him without ceremony or deference. Reading him poetry like he was just a person. "Why didn't you tell me?" I asked. "Because the moment you knew, you became a target." He crouched in front of me, his hands finding my knees. "If anyone discovers you've been harboring me, not just a northern ridge wolf, but their king, your pack won't just exile you. They'll execute you. Public trial, public execution, message to anyone else who might consider treason." The casual way he said it made my stomach turn. "And you let me risk that anyway." I tried to leave. His grip tightened on my knees. "That first week, when you were sleeping, I tried twice. Got as far as the tree line before I collapsed. My body wouldn't let me go. And then," he paused, "then I didn't want to anymore." "Why?" "Because for the first time in 3 years, someone saw me as just me. Not a king, not a symbol, not a political chess piece, just Tony." His voice dropped to a whisper. "You have no idea how rare that is, how precious. So you lied to me." I omitted. "There's a difference. Not a very big one. I know. And I'm sorry." He released my knees, sitting back on his heels. "But I'm not sorry for staying. Not sorry for the time we've had. Not sorry for falling in love with you, even though I shouldn't have. Even though it complicates everything. Love." He'd said it again, so casually, like it was fact. "You can't love me," I said. "You barely know me. I know you saved a dying stranger. I know you risked everything for someone who could give you nothing in return. I know you're braver than anyone I've ever met, even though you don't see it." He tilted his head, those clouded eyes finding mine with unnerving accuracy. "And I know that when you read poetry, your voice gets softer. When you're anxious, you braid your hair. When you think I'm sleeping, you touch my scars like you're trying to heal them with your hands alone." Heat flooded my face. "You were awake for that?" "For most of it." A ghost of a smile touched his lips. "You're not as quiet as you think. You should have said something." Why, so you'd stop?" He shook his head. "Never. Those moments were the only times I felt like maybe I could be more than what I was born to be. Maybe I could just be yours." The word yours did something to my chest. Made it tight and full and terrifying. "This is insane," I said for what felt like the 100th time. "Even if I wanted this, even if I believed you, we can't. The math is irrelevant. It's not. Kings need heirs, legitimate bloodlines, political alliances. I stood abruptly, needing space, needing air. I can't give you any of that. I'm literally the worst possible choice for you. You're the only choice that matters. Stop saying things like that. Why? Because they're true? Because you're afraid to believe them? Because they're impossible? My voice cracked. Because even if you mean them now, eventually you'll realize what everyone else has. That I'm broken. That I'm not enough. That you made a mistake. He was on his feet in an instant, crossing the space between us in 2 strides. His hands found my face again, that touch I was starting to crave like oxygen. Listen to me, he said, his voice fierce. I have been king for 7 years. 7 years of negotiations and compromises and political marriages that never happened because I couldn't stomach binding myself to someone I didn't love. 7 years of being told who I should want, who I should choose, what my duty requires. His thumbs brushed away tears I hadn't realized were falling. And in those 7 years, I have never felt for anyone what I feel for you. This certainty, this need, this absolute conviction that if I let you go, I'll regret it until my dying breath. His forehead pressed to mine. So don't tell me you're not enough. Don't tell me I'll realize my mistake. I'm the one who's not enough for you, but I'm selfish enough to want you anyway. Tony, I know I'm asking for something impossible. I know loving me means war and danger, and a life you never chose. I know I have no right to ask. His voice broke slightly, but I'm asking anyway. Stay with me. Choose this. Choose us. And I swear on everything I am, I will spend the rest of my life making sure you never regret it. I wanted to say no. Wanted to be smart and careful and self-preserving. Wanted to protect myself from the inevitable heartbreak. But when I opened my mouth, what came out was, "What happens now?" He pulled back slightly, surprised. What? If I say yes, if I choose this, what happens? Do we run? Do we hide? Do we just wait here until someone finds us and executes us both? We go north. We go north. To Northern Ridge, where they tried to kill you. To my allies, the ones who still believe in what I was trying to build. His hand slid down to my shoulders. I can't take back the throne alone, but with help with people who believe peace is possible, maybe we can change things. And me? What happens to me in all this? You stand beside me, as my equal, as my... He hesitated, and I could feel the weight of what he wasn't saying. As my queen, if you'll have me. Queen. The word was absurd, laughable. Me, Patricia Russell, the barren outcast, the disposable daughter a queen. That's insane, I whispered. So you keep saying, I don't know how to be a queen. Good thing I don't know how to be a decent king. We can figure it out together. He smiled, and it transformed his face, made him look younger, hopeful. What do you say, Patricia Rose Russell? Will you choose impossible with me? I should have said no, should have been smart, should have protected my heart. Instead, I said, when do we leave? We had 6 days. 6 days before Beta Garrett would send for me. 6 days to plan, prepare, and figure out how to disappear without leaving a trail my pack could follow. 6 days to say goodbye to the only home I'd ever known. Tony spent those days regaining his strength, pushing his body harder than was probably wise, but he was determined to be ready, to be strong enough to protect us both when things inevitably went wrong, because they would go wrong. We both knew that. I spent those days gathering supplies, food that would travel well, warm clothes, medical supplies, everything we'd need to survive in the wilderness until we reached Northern Ridge territory. And at night, we planned. There's a safe house, Tony explained, tracing invisible maps on the floor between us. 3 days travel northeast. Belongs to my most trusted advisor, Carolina. She'll hide us while we figure out next steps. And if she's been compromised, then we improvise. He said it so casually, like improvising against assassination attempts was just normal life. Maybe for him, it was. But Carolina is loyal. If anyone can be trusted, it's her. You said that about your counsel too. His expression darkened. Fair point. But Carolina and I, we have history. She wouldn't betray me. Something sharp twisted in my chest. What kind of history? The childhood friend kind. She's like a sister. He must have caught something in my silence because he added, "Only a sister, Patricia. We never. It's none of my business." It is actually. If we're doing this, if you're choosing me, then it's absolutely your business. He reached for my hand, lacing our fingers together. Carolina tried to court me once. Years ago. I declined. We've been friends ever since. Nothing more. Why did you decline? Because she deserved someone who could love her completely. And I couldn't. He squeezed my hand. I didn't understand why until I met you. I was waiting for this. For you. That's a pretty story. It's the truth. Maybe it was. Maybe he actually believed it. But I'd heard pretty words before. Had believed promises that turned to ash. Still, I let him hold my hand. Let myself pretend, just for a moment, that this could actually work. On the 5th night, I woke to find him gone. Panic seized my chest. I scrambled up, calling his name, checking the back room, the cellar, anywhere he might be. Nothing. He'd left. Of course he'd left. This had all been a fantasy. A game. He'd never intended to take me with him. Never meant those promises. I was just the convenient fool who'd saved his life and fallen for his lies. The door opened. Tony stepped through. Silver hair dusted with snow. Something dark staining his shirt. Blood. What happened? I demanded, rushing to him. Are you hurt? Did someone? I'm fine. It's not my blood. He set something down on the table. A leather satchel. Worn and heavy. I went back to Northern Ridge territory. Just to the border. Left a message for Carolina. You what? My voice rose. You could have been killed, but I wasn't. He caught my hands, stilling their frantic examination of him. I had to make sure she knew we were coming. Had to confirm the safe house is still viable. You should have told me. I would have. Come with me? Absolutely not. Too dangerous. His thumb rubbed circles on my wrist. I can move silently when I need to. You can't. Not yet. Not yet? I'll teach you. When we're safe, I'll teach you everything I know about moving through enemy territory, about reading sounds and scents, about staying alive when everything wants you dead. He smiled slightly. Consider it a wedding gift. My heart stuttered. Wedding? Eventually, when things settle, when I can offer you a real ceremony instead of running through snow in the dark. He paused. Unless you'd prefer to skip the formality? I'm flexible. You're insane. So you keep telling me. He pulled me closer, his arms wrapping around me. But you're still here. Still choosing this. So maybe we're both insane. Maybe we were. Probably we were. But standing there in his arms, feeling his heart beat strong and steady against my cheek, I couldn't bring myself to care. Tomorrow night, he said quietly. We leave tomorrow night. After moonrise, when the pack will be celebrating the lunar festival. Everyone will be distracted. It's our best chance. Okay. Patricia? His voice was softer now, uncertain. If you want to back out, if this is too much, tell me now. I'll go alone. I'll make sure you're protected from fallout. You don't have to. I kissed him. Harder this time. More certain. My hands fisted in his shirt, pulling him down to me. When we broke apart, I said, I'm not backing out. I'm not changing my mind. I'm choosing this. I'm choosing you. Even though it's insane. Especially because it's insane. He laughed a real laugh, full and rich and beautiful. Then he kissed me again, slower this time, deeper, like he was memorizing the taste of me. I love you, he murmured against my lips. I know it's too soon. I know it's not enough. But I need you to know. I know. I pulled back to look at him, to meet those blind eyes that somehow saw everything. And I'm falling too. I don't know if it's love yet, but it's something real. And that's enough. He pressed his forehead to mine. That's more than enough. We stood there for a long time, wrapped in each other, pretending the world outside didn't exist, pretending tomorrow wouldn't change everything, pretending we had more than one night left in this cabin, in this borrowed peace, before reality came crashing back in. But we didn't. And when dawn came, our time would be up. So we held each other in the darkness and pretended we had forever. Chapter 7. The Separation. The day passed too quickly. I moved through the cabin like a ghost, touching things I'd never see again. My father's reading chair, the fireplace where Tony had nearly died, the backroom library he'd built me, every shelf a promise I wanted desperately to believe. "We can come back," Tony said, watching me from the doorway. "When things settle, when it's safe, this doesn't have to be goodbye forever." But we both knew he was lying. There was no coming back. Not really. Whatever happened next, whether we succeeded or failed, lived or died, this version of us, this quiet refuge, was ending tonight. "Tell me about Northern Ridge," I said, needing distraction from my spiraling thoughts. "What it's like. What I should expect." He settled against the doorframe, considering. "It's harsher than here. Colder. The mountains don't forgive weakness." A pause. "But it's beautiful too. The northern lights in winter. The summer valleys full of wildflowers. The hot springs that steam even in the deepest freeze. Sounds almost worth the assassination attempts. Almost." He smiled slightly. "The people are complicated, proud, stubborn. They value strength above everything else, but they define it differently than your pack does. Strength of will, courage under pressure, the ability to endure. Like you. I try." His expression sobered. "They're going to resist this, Patricia. Not just Larry and the council, but the common people too. A southern pack wolf as their queen, they'll see it as betrayal, weakness, proof I've lost my way. Then why bring me at all? Because ruling without you would be worse than not ruling at all." He moved closer, his hand finding my face with that unerring accuracy. "Because I need you beside me, not behind me, not hidden away somewhere safe. Beside me. As my equal. I don't know how to be anyone's equal. I've spent my entire life being less than. Then you'll learn. And I'll help you." His thumb traced my cheekbone. "We'll figure it out together." Like everything else. I wanted to believe him, wanted to trust that this leap into darkness would somehow end in light, but I'd learned the hard way that wanting something didn't make it real. We left 2 hours after moonrise. The lunar festival was in full swing. I could hear the distant drums and singing from the main compound. Everyone would be there, dancing, drinking, celebrating the full moon and the turning of the season. No one would notice one barren outcast slipping away into the night. No one except Beta Garrett, who would be furious when he came to collect me in the morning and found nothing but an empty cabin. I tried not to think about that. Tony moved beside me in wolf form, silent as shadow. He'd wanted to shift, to move faster, to be ready for threats. I didn't argue. In this form, he was safer, stronger, better equipped to protect us both if things went wrong. When things went wrong, we'd made it maybe 3 miles when he suddenly stopped, his body going rigid. "What?" I started. He shifted in a heartbeat, his hand clamping over my mouth. "Quiet," he breathed against my ear. "Someone's following us." My heart hammered. I strained to hear what his better senses had caught. There the faintest crunch of snow. Footsteps trying to be silent. Multiple sets. We'd been found. Tony's hand left my mouth, but his body remained tense, coiled, ready. "When I say run," he whispered, "you run northeast. Don't stop, don't look back. Find the river and follow it upstream. The safe house is—" "I'm not leaving you." "You promised." I lied. "Patricia." The attack came from 3 directions at once. Wolves, 4 of them, maybe 5, erupting from the darkness. Pack guards. They must have been watching the cabin, waiting to see if I'd run. Tony shifted and met them head-on, a blur of silver fur and snapping teeth. Even blind, even outnumbered, he fought with terrifying precision. Every movement calculated, every strike landing exactly where it needed to. But there were too many. I saw the moment he realized it too, the split-second hesitation as another wolf came from his blind side, jaws aiming for his throat. I didn't think. I just moved, grabbed the nearest branch heavy, solid, and swung with everything I had. Caught the attacking wolf across the skull. It yelped, stumbling back. Tony used the opening to take down another, his teeth finding the vulnerable joint between neck and shoulder. The wolf went down hard, but more were coming. I could hear them, reinforcements drawn by the sounds of fighting. "Go!" Tony roared, his voice barely human even in wolf form. "Patricia, run!" I almost did. Almost listened. Almost left him there to face them alone. Then I saw Elder Torvin step out of the trees, silver knife in hand, his eyes cold as winter. "Harboring an enemy of the pack," he said, almost sadly. "We hoped you'd prove us wrong, Patricia. Hoped you'd come quietly to Garrett. But you've chosen treason instead." "She's chosen freedom," Tony snarled, shifting to stand between me and Torvin. Blood matted his fur, his blood. I realized with horror. Too much of it. Something you wouldn't recognize if it bit you. "And you've chosen death, Northern King." Torvin's expression didn't change. "A foolish choice for a foolish man who thinks peace is worth more than strength. Peace is strength. Peace is weakness. The strong take, the weak bargain." Torvin gestured, and more wolves emerged from the darkness. At least a dozen, maybe more. "You've lost, Silverthorn. Both of you. Surrender now, and I'll make it quick." Tony laughed, wild and bitter and broken. "You think I'm afraid of dying? I've been dead for 3 years. She gave me life again. Real life. Whatever happens next, I've already won." Something in Torvin's expression shifted. "Then you'll die together. How romantic." The wolves moved in. Tony fought like something possessed, like every instinct he had was focused on one impossible goal: keep them away from me, protect me, save me. Even when it was clearly hopeless, even when there were too many, even when I was screaming at him to stop, to run, to save himself. I saw the moment everything went wrong. Saw the wolf, a massive gray male I didn't recognize, slam into Tony from behind. Saw him go down hard. Saw the others pile on, teeth and claws finding purchase. Saw blood, so much blood spreading across the snow. No. I was moving before I could think, throwing myself at the pile of wolves, clawing at them, beating at them with my fists, completely ineffective and absolutely desperate. "Get off him. Get off." Someone grabbed me from behind Torvin, his grip iron strong. "Enough," he said. "It's over. Please," I sobbed. "Please don't kill him. I'll do anything. I'll marry Garrett. I'll serve the pack however you want. Just don't, it's too late for bargains." Torvin's voice was almost gentle, almost sad. "You made your choice. Now live with the consequences." He dragged me backward, away from the pile of wolves, away from Tony, who wasn't moving anymore, who was just a broken silver shape in the red snow. I fought, screamed, thrashed against Torvin's hold like a wild thing. It didn't matter. Nothing mattered. The wolves pulled back slowly, warily, revealing Tony's human form beneath, broken and bloody and still. So still. "No," I whispered. "No, no, no. Take her back to the compound," Torvin ordered. "Lock her in the holding cell until the council decides her punishment. And someone confirm the body. Make sure he's—" Tony's eyes opened. Just barely. Just enough to find me across the blood-soaked snow. His lips moved. I couldn't hear the words, but I could read them. "I love you." Then his hand moved fast. Faster than should have been possible for someone that injured. Found something in the snow. A stone? No, a signal flare. The emergency kind. Northern Ridge markers. He triggered it. Brilliant gold light exploded into the sky, piercing the darkness like a second sun. A beacon. A call for help. Or a declaration of war. "You fool," Torvin breathed. "Do you have any idea what you've just done?" Tony smiled, bloody and defiant and beautiful. "Called my people home." Then his eyes closed, and he went completely still. This time, he didn't get back up. They locked me in the holding cell like Torvin ordered. Stone walls, iron bars, a single small window too high to reach. The kind of place designed to break spirits and crush hope. I sat in the corner, knees pulled to my chest, staring at blood on my hands that wouldn't wash off, even though I'd scrubbed until my skin was raw. Tony's blood. The king, my king. Somehow, impossibly lying broken in the snow while I was dragged away, while I failed to protect him the way he'd protected me, while I proved, once again, that I couldn't save anyone. Not my children. Not myself. Not even the man I loved. Loved, past tense already, because he was gone, had to be gone. No one survived wounds like that. No one came back from that much blood loss. He'd died saving me, and I'd killed him by existing. By being someone worth saving. The thought carved through my chest like a blade. Hours passed. Maybe days. Time stopped meaning anything in that cell. Then, the door opened. Elder Torvin entered, his expression grave. Behind him, I caught glimpses of Chaos Pack members running, shouting, the smell of smoke on the wind. "What's happening?" I asked, my voice hoarse from screaming, from crying, from silence. "War," Torvin said it simply. "Your king's signal reached Northern Ridge." They responded, 300 wolves at our borders by sunrise. They're demanding his body and your release. My heart stuttered. He's dead? We don't know. I was on my feet in an instant. What do you mean you don't know? We brought him back to confirm death. He was barely breathing. No heartbeat we could detect. But before we could, Torvin's jaw tightened. He vanished. Someone infiltrated our medical ward and took him. We found 2 guards dead. No trail, no trace. Hope, desperate, painful, dangerous hope flared in my chest. Who? We believe it was Carolina Nightsong, his head advisor. Torvin studied me carefully. Did you know she was in the area? No. The lie came easily. Because if Carolina had him, if she'd gotten him out, then maybe he had a chance. I've never met her. The Northern Ridge Wolves claim you're their king's bonded mate. His chosen queen. Torvin's eyes bored into mine. Is that true? Does it matter? It matters because if it's true, you're a political prisoner now. A bargaining chip. We can't just execute you without risking full-scale war. He paused. But if it's false, if you're just some woman he seduced for convenience, then you're simply a traitor. And traitors burn. The choice was obvious. Claim the bond, claim the title, claim protection I didn't deserve. But claiming it meant accepting that Tony and I were tied together in ways that would drag me into his world completely. Meant becoming something I didn't know how to be. Meant stepping into a role that terrified me. It also meant survival. It meant a chance, however small, of seeing him again. It's true, I said quietly. I'm his mate. His chosen. His queen. Torvin nodded slowly, like he'd expected that answer. Then you'll remain here until negotiations are complete. The Northern Ridge Pack wants you returned. We want assurances they won't attack. And everyone wants to know if their king is actually alive, or if this is all elaborate theater. If he's alive, I said carefully. What happens? Then there will be war anyway. Because we tried to kill him. Because we took what was his. Torvin's expression was unreadable. Either way, girl. You've brought catastrophe to our doorstep. He left before I could respond, locking the door behind him. I sank back down to the floor, hope and horror warring in my chest. Tony might be alive. He might be fighting even now to get back to me, to fulfill the promises he'd made. Or he might be dead, and this was all just Northern Ridge posturing, political games played with my life as the wager. I wouldn't know until it was too late. So I did the only thing I could do. I wrapped my arms around my knees, pressed my face into them, and whispered stories into the darkness. Stories about kings who loved unwisely, about queens who were chosen not born, about promises kept even when the cost was blood, and I prayed to whatever gods might listen that Tony was alive to hear them. Subscribe if you're rooting for Patricia and Tony to survive this, because they need an audience that won't give up on them when everything falls apart. Comment below if their separation feels like your heartbreak too, if you've ever fought for someone the world said you couldn't have. Chapter 8. 7 days. 7 days of sitting in that cell, while the world outside descended into chaos. 7 days of listening to shouted arguments, running footsteps, the clash of metal on metal as packs positioned for war. 7 days of not knowing if Tony was alive or dead. They fed me, gave me water, treated me like the political prisoner I'd become, valuable enough to keep breathing, not valuable enough to give answers. On the 8th day, everything changed. I woke to silence. Complete, absolute silence. The kind that precedes storms or endings or both. Then, footsteps, multiple sets, moving with military precision. The door opened. Elder Torvin stood there, but his expression had transformed. No longer cold assessment now, there was something else. Respect? Fear? I couldn't tell. "Get up," he said. "You're being transferred." "Where?" "To the neutral ground. The grove of first meeting." He gestured for me to stand. "Both packs have agreed to negotiations. You're central to them." My legs trembled as I stood. 8 days of minimal movement had left me weak. "Is he alive?" "Yes." Torvin's jaw tightened. "Very much alive, and very much demanding your return." The relief almost dropped me to my knees. Alive. Tony was alive. They led me out of the cell, through corridors I barely recognized. The compound was transformed, half the pack in battle formation, weapons visible, tension thick enough to choke on. Everyone stopped to stare as I passed. The barren outcast, who'd somehow become the center of a territorial war. I kept my head high, refused to flinch under their scrutiny. If I was going to be a queen, even an improbable queen, I needed to start acting like one. The grove of first meeting sat exactly between territories. Ancient trees forming a natural cathedral. Their branches bare in winter but still imposing. Sacred ground where packs had negotiated peace treaties for generations. Now it would host negotiations that might prevent or trigger war. Northern ridge wolves lined one side of the clearing. At least 100, maybe more. All in formation. All armed. All watching with golden eyes that promised violence if things went wrong. My pack lined the other side. Fewer in number but equally ready for conflict. And in the center, standing alone, Tony. My heart stopped. He was alive, standing, upright and whole and alive. He'd shifted to human form for the negotiations, probably the only reason my pack hadn't attacked on sight. Dressed in dark leathers that marked him as Northern Ridge royalty, his silver hair pulled back, his scarred face set in an expression of absolute authority. But those clouded eyes, those blind, beautiful eyes were searching, looking for me even though he couldn't see. The moment my escort brought me into the clearing, his entire body changed. Tension releasing. Relief so profound it was visible even from a distance. "Patricia," not loud, not a shout, just my name, spoken like a prayer answered. I wanted to run to him, wanted to throw myself into his arms and confirm he was real, solid, alive. But Torvin's grip on my arm tightened. Not yet. We stopped 10 feet from Tony. Close enough to see the healing scars across his ribs, the way he held himself carefully, not fully recovered, but functional. Close enough to see the way his hands clenched at his sides, fighting the same urge I felt. "King Silverthorn," Elder Torvin said formally. "You've demanded this meeting. State your terms." Tony's expression didn't change, still that regal mask, that perfect control. "Release her. Immediately. And I'll consider not burning your territory to ash. You're in no position to make threats. You're outnumbered on your own borders. Your council is divided, and you're still recovering from wounds that should have killed you." Torvin's voice was reasonable, calm. "Perhaps we can negotiate something more equitable." "There's nothing equitable about kidnapping my mate." Tony's voice dropped to something dangerous. "Return her now, or discover exactly how creative I can be with vengeance." "You'd start a war over one woman? Over this woman?" Without hesitation, murmurs rippled through both packs. This was insane. Kings didn't make declarations like this, didn't admit to weaknesses, didn't put personal attachments above political strategy. But Tony had never been a normal king. "We have terms of our own," Torvin said. "The woman stays with us. She's our pack member. After all, you withdraw your forces. We agree to neutrality regarding your internal Northern Ridge politics, and we forget this incident ever happened." "Counterproposal," Tony said flatly. "I take what's mine. You pray I'm merciful enough not to destroy you for touching her." and we renegotiate territorial agreements after I've secured her safety. That's not a negotiation. That's a threat. Yes, it is. Tony tilted his head slightly, those blind eyes somehow finding Torvin across the space. You tried to kill me. Failed. Imprisoned my mate. And now you want to bargain? The only reason your pact still stands is because she asked me not to retaliate. The only reason you're alive is because she believes in mercy more than I do. He took a step forward, and every Northern Ridge wolf moved with him, a coordinated show of force that made my pack tense, hands moving to weapons. But my mercy has limits, Tony continued, his voice carrying across the clearing. And you've reached them. So here's what's going to happen. You're going to release Patricia. Now. You're going to formally apologize for imprisonment of a Northern Ridge royal. And then you're going to negotiate new treaties with me, fair treaties that don't involve trying to murder me or mine. Or what? Torvin interrupted. You'll wage war? Spill blood over a woman who can't even produce heirs? A barren outcast your own council will never accept as queen? The words landed like physical blows, true and cruel and calculated to hurt. I saw Tony's jaw tighten, saw rage flash across his features, but when he spoke, his voice was steady. Yes, I'll wage war. I'll burn every territory between here and the Northern Mountains. I'll make an example so devastating that no pack will ever question what happens when you threaten what's mine. He paused. And as for my council accepting her, they'll learn. Or they'll find themselves without a king. You'd abdicate? Happily, Patricia matters more than a crown. Tony's smile was sharp as broken glass. You think I care about ruling if she's not beside me? You think power means anything without her? That's madness. That's love. Tony's voice softened slightly, though his posture remained aggressive. Something you clearly don't understand. Torvin was quiet for a long moment, calculating, weighing options. Finally, if we release her, what guarantee do we have that you won't attack anyway? You have my word. The word of a king who abandoned his throne. The word of a man who keeps his promises. Tony's hand extended not toward Torvin, but toward me, blind and reaching and absolutely certain I was there. Patricia, come here. Torvin's grip on my arm didn't loosen. Not until we have terms. The terms are simple. Release her, or watch your pack burn. Those are the options. Tony's extended hand didn't waver. Patricia, trust me. Walk to me now. It was insane. Torvin could snap my neck before I took 2 steps. The assembled packs could descend into violence that would kill everyone. This could go wrong in 1,000 ways. But Tony's hand remained steady, reaching for me across empty air and political chaos and the ruins of everything we'd tried to build. So I made a choice. I yanked free of Torvin's grip and walked. 10 feet felt like miles, every step heavy with consequence. I half expected arrows, knives, teeth, to find me before I reached him, but they didn't. Both packs held their positions, watching, waiting to see what would happen. I reached Tony's extended hand, and his fingers closed around mine immediately, grip tight enough to hurt, tight enough to anchor. I've got you, he murmured. Then, louder, she's made her choice. Honor it, or face the consequences. For a long moment, nothing happened. The clearing held its breath. Then Elder Torvin sighed a sound of resignation and calculated loss. Very well, she's yours. Take her and go. But this isn't over, Silverthorn. Your actions today have consequences. So do yours. Tony pulled me closer, his free hand finding my face, confirming I was real, whole, safe. Remember that when you sleep tonight. Remember that you tried to kill your king's mate. And know that I'm the only thing standing between you and Northern Ridge's full fury. He turned, keeping me tucked against his side, and walked toward his assembled pack. They parted for us. Immediately, a pathway of wolves bowing their heads in respect or acknowledgement, or maybe just relief that their king was alive and functional. We'd almost reached the tree line when Torvin called out, "She'll never be accepted. Your people will tear her apart." Tony stopped. Didn't turn around. Just said, loud enough for everyone to hear, "Then they'll learn the same lesson you did today. I don't negotiate when it comes to her. I don't compromise. I don't yield." He glanced back over his shoulder, those blind eyes somehow finding Torvin one last time. She's mine, I'm hers, and anyone who threatens that will discover exactly how ruthless a desperate king can be. Then we were moving again, into the forest, surrounded by northern ridge wolves who formed a protective barrier around us. We walked for what felt like hours but was probably only minutes. Finally reached a clearing where horses waited, actual horses, not just wolves running along with a woman I didn't recognize. Tall, dark-skinned, with braided black hair, and eyes that assessed me with sharp intelligence. She wore armor marked with Northern Ridge insignia, and when she moved, it was with the fluid grace of someone who'd spent their entire life training for combat. "Carolina," Tony said, and the relief in his voice was palpable. "Tell me we're secure. Perimeter's clear. Scouts report no pursuit." Carolina's gaze moved to me, and something softened in her expression. "So this is her. The one who saved your stubborn life. Patricia, meet Carolina Nightsong, my oldest friend and the only reason I'm not dead." Tony's arm tightened around me. "Carolina, this is Patricia. My everything." Carolina smiled, genuine warmth breaking through the warrior exterior. "He hasn't shut up about you for 8 days. It's been insufferable." She extended her hand. "Welcome to Northern Ridge, Queen Patricia. Though I warn you, the title comes with significantly more drama than you're probably prepared for." "Queen." The words still didn't feel real, but I took Carolina's hand anyway. "I'm not sure I'm prepared for any of this." "Good. Neither was he when he became king." Carolina shot Tony an amused look. "You'll fit right in." "We need to move," one of the other wolves said, a grizzled older male with lieutenant markings. "Before they change their minds about peaceful resolution." Tony nodded. "Mount up. We ride for the capital." "You can't ride," Carolina protested. "You're barely healed. You need at least another week." "I'm fine." "You're not. You were dead 8 days ago. And yet here I am, annoying you." Tony's smile was tired but real. "We ride. I'm not spending another night away from home. Away from safety. Away from where I can actually protect her." Carolina looked like she wanted to argue more but finally just sighed. "Fine. But I'm forcing you to rest the moment we reach the capital, and you're not allowed to die again. Once was traumatic enough." "Noted." They helped us onto horses, Tony and me sharing one, because apparently he didn't trust anyone else to keep me safe during the journey. His arms wrapped around me from behind, solid and warm and alive. We rode. The journey took 2 days. 2 days of sleeping rough, of nervous watches, of Tony's body pressed against mine like he was afraid I'd disappear if he let go. 2 days of slowly realizing what I'd agreed to, what my life would become. The Northern Ridge capital appeared on the horizon at sunset. On the second day, a fortress carved into the mountain itself, all dark stone and defensive walls and the unmistakable aura of power. "Home," Tony murmured against my ear. "Are you ready?" "No." "Good answer." I felt him smile. Neither was I, the first time. We rode through gates that opened at our approach, into a courtyard filled with wolves who stopped what they were doing to stare. At their king, returned from the dead. At me, the southern stranger he'd nearly died for. The whispers started immediately. I could feel the weight of judgment, of assessment, of 100 questions I had no answers for. Tony dismounted first, then helped me down, his hands gentle despite the audience. "Steady," he murmured. "They're just curious. Give them time." "How much time?" "As much as you need." He raised his voice, addressing the assembled wolves. "This is Patricia Russell, my mate. Your queen. Anyone who has a problem with that can take it up with me directly. Preferably after I've slept for 12 hours and stopped feeling like death." A few laughs, tentative but genuine. The tension eased slightly. Carolina stepped forward. "Someone show the queen to the royal chambers, and someone else drag this idiot to the healers before he collapses out of sheer stubbornness." "I'm fine," Tony started. "You're not. Go." Carolina's tone brooked no argument. Then, to me, "I'll come find you once he's settled. Show you around. Answer questions. Try to prepare you for the absolute chaos you've walked into." I nodded, too overwhelmed to form words. Tony's hand found mine one more time. Squeezed. I'll find you tonight. After they've finished fussing over me. We need to talk. About? Everything. His blind eyes found mine with that uncanny accuracy. About what happens next. About us. About promises I still need to keep. Then he was being led away by Carolina and a group of healers, and I was left standing in the courtyard of a foreign pack, surrounded by strangers, trying to figure out how I'd ended up here, how I'd gone from dying in a cabin alone to this. A servant, young, nervous, approached. "My lady, if you'll follow me." I did, through corridors of dark stone and flickering torches, past guards who watched me with expressions I couldn't read, upstairs that seemed endless. Finally, we reached a set of double doors carved with intricate wolf imagery. "The king's chambers," the servant said, opening them. "Yours now too, I suppose." The rooms beyond were not what I expected. Warm, lived in, books stacked on every surface, a massive fireplace already lit and crackling, windows that overlooked the mountains, painted gold by the setting sun, and in the corner, I almost laughed, a reading chair that looked remarkably similar to the one in my father's cabin. "He had it brought from your territory," a voice said behind me. I turned to find Carolina standing in the doorway. "What?" "The chair. He sent someone to retrieve it the day after he woke up. Said you'd need something familiar." She stepped into the room, her expression softer now that we were alone. "He's been preparing these rooms for you all week, obsessively. Drove the servants mad with his demands that everything be perfect." My throat tightened. "He thought I'd actually come here? Even after he knew you'd come here, because he was coming to get you, one way or another." Carolina moved to the window, looking out over the Capitol. "I've known Tony his entire life. Watched him become king. Watched him make impossible choices and carry impossible burdens. I've never seen him like this. Never seen him risk everything for one person." "Is that a warning?" "It's an observation." She turned back to me. "You terrify our council. Larry especially. Your southern pack, barren, politically inconvenient, and completely unsuitable by every traditional measure." A pause. "Which is exactly why Tony chose you." "I don't understand." "He doesn't want traditional, he wants real. He wants someone who sees him as Tony, not King Silverthorn." Carolina's smile was slight but genuine. "He wants you, and when Tony wants something that badly, reality tends to rearrange itself around his stubbornness. That's not how the world works. Maybe not. But it's how he works. And somehow, impossible as it seems, he makes it true." She headed for the door, then paused. "Get some rest. Tomorrow, the real challenges begin. Tonight, just be here. Be alive. Be together. That's enough." She left before I could respond. I stood in those chambers, my chambers now, apparently, and tried to process everything. Failed completely, so I did the only thing I could. I sat in my father's chair, pulled a book from the nearest stack at random, and started reading, waiting for Tony to come home. He found me 3 hours later. I'd dozed off in the chair, the book sliding from my hands, exhaustion finally catching up with the adrenaline that had carried me through the past week. "Patricia." His voice pulled me back to consciousness. I opened my eyes to find him standing in the doorway, backlit by torchlight, looking more real and solid and there than should have been possible for someone who'd been half dead a week ago. "Hey," I said eloquently. "Hey." He closed the door behind him, moving into the room with that careful precision, wearing soft clothes now instead of armor, hair loose around his shoulders, looking less like a king, and more like the wolf I'd pulled from the snow. "The healers finally released me, after much complaining on my part. You should rest. I've been resting for 8 days. I'm done resting." He crossed to where I sat, then dropped to his knees in front of the chair. His hands found my legs, slid up to cup my face. "Are you okay? Did they hurt you? Did Torvin?" "I'm fine." Scared, confused, completely overwhelmed. "But fine." His thumb brushed my cheekbone. "I'm sorry. For all of it. For dragging you into this. For almost dying. For—" "Stop." I caught his hands. "You didn't drag me anywhere. I chose this." chose you. Remember? Even now, even seeing what it means, what you'll have to face? I looked around the chambers at the careful preparations, the familiar chair, the life he was offering me. Then back at him, at those blind eyes that somehow saw everything that mattered, even now. I said softly. He released a breath like he'd been holding it for days. Thank you. For what? For not running. For not realizing I'm not worth all this trouble. His smile was tired and self-deprecating. For being impossibly brave. For being impossibly brave. I'm not brave. I'm terrified. Same thing, usually. He stood, pulling me up with him. Come here. There's something I need to show you. He led me through a side door I hadn't noticed into another room. Smaller, more intimate. It was the library. Not just any library, my library. Or a recreation of it, anyway. Every shelf from the cabin room he'd built me, reconstructed here. The same dimensions, the same careful arrangement, even some of the same books. Though many more had been added. How? I breathed. I told you. I keep my promises. He moved to stand beside me, his shoulder brushing mine. This is yours. Your space. Somewhere you can escape when being queen becomes too much. Somewhere you can just be. I couldn't speak. Couldn't form words around the emotion clogging my throat. I know it's not the same. He continued quietly. I know you gave up everything to be here. Your home, your territory, your... I kissed him, hard and desperate, and full of everything I couldn't say. My hands in his hair, his arms wrapping around me, pulling me closer like he was trying to merge us into one person. When we finally broke apart, both breathing hard, I said, thank you. For the library? For seeing me. For choosing me. For making impossible feel possible. I pressed my forehead to his. For being worth all this trouble. He laughed, soft and real and beautiful. We're both worth trouble. That's why this works. Does it work? Really? I don't know yet. But I'm willing to find out if you are. His hand slid down to my waist, holding me steady. So here's my question, Patricia Rose Russell. Will you marry me? Officially this time. In front of witnesses who won't try to murder us. With vows that actually mean something. You're asking now? I've been asking since the night we met. You just weren't ready to hear it yet. His smile was gentle. But maybe now you are. I thought about everything that had brought us here. The snow and blood, the stories and riddles, the impossible choices that had somehow led to this impossible moment. Ask me again, I said. What? The way you used to, every night. I pulled back slightly to see his face. Ask me the way you did when you were still pretending to be just a wolf. Understanding dawned. His expression softened into something that made my chest ache. Will you marry me? He asked quietly. The same words he'd said dozens of times. The riddle that was never really a riddle. Yes, I said, for the first time. Finally, but I want to keep choosing you. Every day. Every night. Even when it's hard. Especially when it's hard, he agreed. And I want you to keep asking. Keep giving me the choice. Always. His forehead pressed to mine again. Every day for the rest of our lives. If that's what you need. It is. Then I'll ask. And you'll answer. And we'll keep choosing each other until we're too old and stubborn to remember our own names. I laughed, actually laughed. Full and genuine and free. That's the worst romantic promise I've ever heard. It's the most honest one. He pulled me closer, wrapping me in his arms. I love you, Patricia. I love your stubbornness and your kindness, and the way you tell stories like they can change the world. I love that you saved me when you had no reason to, that you chose me when it would have been easier not to. I love you too, I whispered. Finally saying it. Finally admitting what had been growing since that first night. I love that you built me a library, that you see me as whole when everyone else sees broken, that you keep your promises even when they're impossible, especially when they're impossible. We stood there for a long time, wrapped in each other, in the library he'd built for me, in the impossible life we were choosing together. Finally, he said, Come to bed. Real bed. Not a cell floor or ground or chair. Actual bed where we can sleep for 12 hours and not worry about assassins or negotiations or anything except each other. That sounds perfect. It was. Epilogue. 1 year later, I woke to find Tony already awake, his fingers tracing idle patterns on my arm. Morning, I murmured, still half asleep. Morning. He pressed a kiss to my shoulder. How did you sleep? Better than I have in weeks. I rolled to face him, finding those clouded eyes in the dim pre-dawn light. You? Same. He smiled, the easy, genuine one he only showed in private. Though I was awake for the last hour, just listening to you breathe. That's creepy. That's love. His hand found my face, thumb brushing my cheekbone in that familiar gesture. Also, I have something for you. What? He shifted, reaching for something on the nightstand. When his hand returned, it held a small leather journal, worn and clearly used. What is this? I asked, taking it. Open it. I did. Inside, in careful handwriting that must have taken him months to perfect, were stories, dozens of them. Some I recognized, tales I'd told him that first winter. Others were new, all written in his hand. You wrote these? Carolina helped. Read them to me so I could transcribe them correctly. He sounded almost embarrassed. I wanted you to have them. Your stories. Preserved, so you'd never forget where we started. My vision blurred with tears. Tony, there's more. Look at the last page. I flipped to the end. Found a single sentence in that careful script. Some promises are meant to be kept forever. Below it, in a different handwriting, mine, though I didn't remember writing it, was the answer to his riddle. The one I'd finally figured out months after arriving at Northern Ridge. A promise. When did I? You wrote it in your sleep. About 6 months ago. Mumbled something about finally understanding, then grabbed a pen. His smile widened. I had Carolina read it to me the next morning. Thought it was fitting to include. I set the journal aside and pulled him close, kissing him with everything I felt and couldn't say. When we broke apart, he murmured, "Will you marry me?" I laughed. We're already married. Have been for 8 months. I know, but I like asking. His fingers tangled in my hair. Humor me. Yes, I said. Like I did every morning. Like I would every morning for the rest of our lives. Always yes. Good. He settled back, pulling me against his chest. Because I have plans for today. What kind of plans? The kind that involve you, me, and absolutely no royal responsibilities. Just stories and libraries and pretending the world doesn't exist. That sounds perfect. It was. Being queen was harder than I'd ever imagined. The Northern Ridge Council still questioned me. Larry still schemed from his exile. There were always threats, always challenges, always people who thought I was unsuitable. But Tony stood beside me through all of it, teaching me, supporting me, reminding me that I was chosen not because I was perfect, but because I was me. And slowly, impossibly slowly, things were changing. The council was learning to accept me. The pack was starting to see strength in different forms. Peace treaties were being negotiated with southern packs, including my own. It wasn't easy, it wasn't simple, but it was real, and real was all we'd ever promised each other. Later that morning, we sat in our library, his arms around me, my back against his chest, while I read poetry, and he listened with that absolute focus that still made me feel like the most important thing in his world. "Patricia," he said during a pause between poems. Thank you. For reading to you? For pulling. For the 3 miles. For refusing to let me die." His arms tightened. "For choosing mercy when the world told you to choose differently." I set the book down and twisted to look at him. "You saved me too, you know, in every way that matters. We saved each other." "Yes," I agreed. "We did." In the corner of the library, carved into the wooden frame of the shelves he'd built, were words I'd only noticed recently. "You're mine, I'm yours." Some promises are meant to be kept forever. I traced them now with my fingertips, feeling the grooves, the permanence. "When did you carve this?" I asked. "The day I knew I loved you," Before I could say it, before I knew if you'd stay. His cheek rested against my hair. I wanted there to be proof. Evidence that this was real, that I'd chosen you. And meant it. You're ridiculous. I'm yours. He pressed a kiss to my temple. Same thing. And sitting there in our library, in the impossible life we'd built from snow and blood and stubborn hope, I finally understood what the riddle had always meant. A promise wasn't just words. It was action, choice, showing up every day and choosing again. It was Tony asking, "Will you marry me?" Long after we'd already been married. It was me saying, yes, every time, meaning it more with each repetition. It was the library rebuilt, the chair carried across territories, the stories preserved in careful script. It was 3 miles through snow. 8 days in a cell. A year of learning to be queen. It was all of it. Every impossible choice that led here. I love you, I said. I love you too. He shifted, pulling me more fully into his arms. Now keep reading. We have all day, and I want to hear everything. So I did. I read until my voice grew hoarse. Until afternoon light painted the library gold. Until we were both too hungry to ignore. And when I finally set the book aside, when we finally moved from that perfect frozen moment, I carried the certainty with me. Some promises are meant to be kept forever. And ours the impossible, ridiculous, beautiful promise we'd made in snow and blood, and story, was one of them. If Patricia and Tony's story moved you, you'll love the Alpha's second chance. A tale of redemption, fierce love, and choosing each other against impossible odds. The book is shown on your screen right now, and the link is waiting for you in the description below. Thank you for being here, for listening, and for believing that broken things can become beautiful again.